The sun had dipped below the horizon hours ago, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples before fading into a deep velvety black. Now only the harsh glow of Sarah's headlights cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating a narrow ribbon of asphalt stretching endlessly before her, or at least it had been endless. Now the ribbon had been abruptly cut short. Her ancient sedan, a hand-me-down from her grandma that had seen more miles than a cross-country trucker, had sputtered, coughed, and finally, with a disheartening groan, given up the ghost. The engine had died with a whimper, plunging her into a silence so profound. It felt heavy, suffocating. The only sounds were the tick-tick-tick of the cooling engine and the distant mournful cry of a coyote. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. A wave of despair washed over her, cold and absolute. She was on a back road, one she'd taken as a shortcut, hoping to save a few precious minutes. Now those saved minutes felt like a cruel joke. She hadn't seen another car for at least an hour. Cell phones were still a luxury for most folks, and Sarah certainly didn't have one. She was truly, utterly alone. She tried the ignition again, twisting the key with a desperate hope that felt foolish even to herself. Nothing. Just a pathetic click and then silence. Her shoulders slumped, tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Crying wouldn't fix a broken engine. Crying wouldn't magically summon a mechanic out of the darkness. Sighing, she reached for the glove compartment, pulling out a worn Rotate. The nearest town, Harmony Creek, was at least 20 miles back. The next one, Pine Ridge, was even further ahead. She was in the middle of nowhere, miles from anywhere. It was getting late past midnight and the air was growing cold, chilling her to the bone despite the lingering heat from the engine. She considered walking, but the thought quickly faded. 20 miles in the dead of night on a deserted road where wild animals roamed. It was a recipe for disaster. Besides, she wasn't sure she could even walk that far without collapsing from exhaustion and fear. Panic began to coil in her stomach. What was she going to do? Sleep in the car? It offered little protection against the growing chill or the unseen dangers of the night. Her gas tank was nearly empty, so running the heater for long wasn't an option. She felt utterly helpless, a feeling she detested more than anything. She stared out the window into the inky blackness, hoping for a glimmer of light, a sign of life, anything. The moon, a sliver of silver, offered little illumination, hidden mostly behind a scattering of clouds. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist into menacing shapes. She hugged herself, trying to ward off the shivers that weren't entirely from the cold. Just as she was about to bury her face in her hands and allow the tears to finally fall, a distant hum reached her ears. It was faint at first, barely a whisper on the wind. Then it grew a low rumble that vibrated through the ground beneath her. A moment later, a pair of powerful headlights materialized in the darkness. Behind her, growing rapid larger, her heart leaped. Hope, pure and exhilarating, surged through her veins. She sat up straighter, trying to appear calm, collected, though her heart was pounding like a drum against her ribs. The hum grew into a roar, a powerful engine thrumming with contained energy. The headlights, blindingly bright, filled her rear-view mirror, then swept around her, illuminating her stranded car in a brilliant wash of white. The vehicle that pulled up alongside her was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was long, sleek, and gleamed even in the dim light, a deep, rich color she couldn't quite make out. It looked expensive, custom-made like something out of a movie. As it slowed, its silhouette was imposing, a symbol of power and luxury on this humble, forgotten road. It didn't just pass. It slowed, then pulled over a good 100 feet ahead of her and stopped. Powerful engine quieted, replaced by the gentle tick of its own cooling metal. For a long moment, nothing happened. Sarah held her breath, her mind racing. Was it a good Samaritan or something far more sinister? Then the driver's side door swung open and a figure emerged. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and even in the dim light, there was an unmistakable presence about him. He stood for a moment silhouetted against the faint glow of his own taillights, before slowly starting to walk back towards her. Sarah's heart hammered harder. Help had arrived. But who was this man of the night? The man walked with a confident, easy stride, his footsteps crunching softly on the gravel shoulder. As he drew closer, Sarah could make out more details. He was exceptionally tall, with broad shoulders that filled out his dark shirt. He wore a pair of aviator sunglasses, even at this late hour, which made it impossible to see his eyes. A flash of silver gleamed on his finger, a large distinctive ring. Sarah quickly rolled down her window just a crack. She wanted to be able to talk, but also maintain a barrier. If things felt off, her hand hovered near the door handle, ready to lock it if necessary. He stopped a few feet from her car, his shadow falling over her driver's side door. "Everything all right here, Mom?" His voice was deep, smooth, with a distinct southern drawl that resonated with a familiar quality, though Sarah couldn't quite place it. It wasn't menacing, but it was powerful, commanding. "No," Sarah said, her voice a little shaky despite her best efforts to sound composed. She gestured vaguely at the hood. "I'm stranded." He nodded slowly, as if taking it all in. "Looks like it. Mind if I take a look?" Sarah hesitated. "Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't want to trouble you." She was still wary, but his calm demeanor and polite question were reassuring. Besides, what choice did she have? "No trouble at all, ma'am," he said, his voice gentle. "Wouldn't feel right just driving by. Happens to the best of us." He gestured towards the front of her car. "Pop the hood for me, will you?" Sarah reached down, fumbling for the latch with a click. The hood popped up a few inches. The man walked around to the front, and in the faint glow of her remaining dashboard lights, she watched him. He seemed utterly comfortable in the darkness, moving with a quiet confidence. He lifted the hood fully, revealing the greasy, intricate mess of her engine. He leaned in his face close to the engine, inspecting it with a focused intensity. Sarah watched him, trying to get a better look. Even with the sunglasses, there was something about him, a certain aura. His dark hair was styled falling just so, and his sideburns were noticeable. He had a strong jawline, and his posture was effortlessly cool. He poked around a bit. At his hand surprise, he tapped a few hoses, checked some connections. He murmured more to himself than to her. "Battery seems okay. You getting any power inside?" "Just the dash lights," Sarah replied. "Nothing else." "No crank." He straightened up, sighing softly. "Likely an alternator or a starter motor, ma'am. Or something more serious. It's beyond roadside repair, I reckon." Paused, then turned back to face her, his sunglasses still hiding his eyes. "You got any way of getting a tow out here?" Sarah shook her head, feeling a fresh wave of despair. "No, sir. No cell phone. And I haven't seen a car for ages. I was taking a shortcut." "Thought so," he said, a hint of sympathy in his voice. He reached up slowly, pushing his sunglasses up onto his forehead, and that was when Sarah saw them, those eyes, piercing, brilliant blue, that seemed to glow even in the dim light, surrounded by long, dark lashes. And around those eyes, his face, the high cheekbones, the slight curl of his lip, the unmistakable tilt of his head. Her breath hitched, her heart already pounding, skipped a beat, then began to race frantically. It couldn't be. It was impossible. She blinked, convinced her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. But no, the face staring back at her, etched clearly in the faint light, was undeniably familiar. It was on magazine covers, on album sleeves, on every radio station. It was a face known around the world. Elvis Presley, the king. Standing in front of her broken-down car, in the middle of nowhere, on a deserted back road, was Elvis Presley. Sarah felt a dizzying rush, a mix of disbelief, awe, and a sudden overwhelming sense of the surreal. This wasn't happening. This had to be a dream. He gave her a small, kind smile, a genuine warmth emanating from him that instantly dispelled any lingering fear. "Well, ma'am," he said, his voice softening, a hint of amusement in his eyes now, as if he knew the shock she was experiencing. "Looks like you're in a bit of a pickle. How about you? Let me give you a ride to the nearest town. We can find a garage there that's open. Or at least get you a tow truck summoned." Sarah just stared at him, speechless. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but no words came out. The king of rock and roll was offering her a ride. Her mind was reeling, struggling to process the impossible reality unfolding before her. Sarah eventually found her voice, though it came out as little more than a breathless whisper. You're Elvis Presley." A soft, knowing chuckle escaped him. "Last time I checked, ma'am. That's what my mama called me." His blue eyes twinkled with a gentle amusement. "But out here, just call me Elvis." Sarah felt a blush creep up her neck. She must have looked like a complete fool gawking at him. I'm Sarah," she managed finally, extending a shaky hand through the open window. Took at his grip warm and firm, his fingers surprisingly calloused. It was a real handshake, not a dismissive flick of the wrist. "Pleasure to meet you, Sarah," he said, his smile widening, revealing a hint of his famous charm. "Now about that ride, it's getting mighty late to be out here alone. You can leave your car and we'll send a tow truck back for it in the morning." Sarah hesitated, looking back at her car, then at his impossibly sleek vehicle parked up the road. The thought of leaving her only means of transportation felt wrong. But what choice did she have? The idea of spending another minute alone on this dark road was terrifying. And the idea of riding in a car with Elvis Presley was, well, it was completely insane, but also incredibly tempting. "Are you sure?" she asked, still grappling with the surreal situation. "I mean, you must be very busy. I wouldn't want to impose." He waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. I was just out for a drive clearing my head. It's a quiet night. Wouldn't be right to leave a lady stranded. Come on now, grab what you need. My car's got plenty of room." He had a way of speaking that was both humble and deeply persuasive. It wasn't a commanding voice, but one that simply assumed you would agree, because what he suggested was clearly the most sensible, most human thing to do. Sarah quickly grabbed her purse and her small overnight bag from the back seat. As she got out of her car, she felt a profound sense of vulnerability, leaving it behind. The presence of Elvis standing patiently by, waiting for her, was strangely comforting. He walked her over to his car, opening the passenger door for her with a practiced courtesy. The interior was even more luxurious than she'd imagined. Plush leather seats, gleaming wood paneling, and an almost overwhelming smell of expensive new car. As she settled in, he closed the door softly and then walked around to the driver's side. He slid behind the wheel, the car feeling even more enormous with him inside. He reached down and adjusted something on the dashboard, and then the quiet hum of a powerful engine filled the silence. He didn't immediately pull away. Instead, he turned slightly in his seat, looking at her. "So, Sarah," he began. His voice relaxed now. "Where were you headed this time of night?" she told him, explaining her journey to visit an aunt a few towns over. As she spoke, she found herself surprisingly at ease. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, he listened intently, occasionally nodding, his piercing blue eyes fixed on her. There was no pretense, no air of celebrity, just genuine interest. "And you're a student?" he asked, noticing a textbook on her bag. "Part-time," she clarified. "Working to pay my way through college. Nursing. He repeated a respectful tone in his voice. "That's good work, Sarah, helping folks. That's mighty important." They talked for a few more minutes about her studies, about the small town she lived in, about the simple things. He shared a little about the quiet life he sometimes longed for, away from the constant glare of the spotlight. It was a strange, intimate conversation. Two strangers on a dark road, sharing pieces of their lives. Sarah kept stealing glances at him. He was even more striking. Up close, the famous face etched with lines of experience, but still incredibly handsome. He radiated a quiet power, yet there was a tenderness in his gaze. A genuine warmth that made her forget for a moment who he was. He was just a kind man, helping someone in need. He finally put the car in gear, and the sleek vehicle glided forward, picking up speed effortlessly. The powerful headlights cut through the darkness, making the empty road seem less menacing. The soft glow of the dashboard lights illuminated his profile, and Sarah found herself captivated. "Don't you worry about that car of yours, Sarah," he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "We'll get you sorted out. Find a good mechanic. It'll be back on the road before you know it." His confidence was reassuring. A balm to her frayed nerves, she felt an immense wave of gratitude wash over her. She still couldn't quite believe it was happening, but here she was, riding in a luxury car with Elvis Presley, miles from anywhere. And he was being nothing but kind. The realization that he wasn't just a performer, but a genuinely good person, was slowly dawning on her. It was an intriguing, captivating experience, one she knew she would never forget. The powerful car moved smoothly down the deserted highway, devouring the miles with silent grace. The rumble of the engine was a comforting thrum, a stark contrast to the deathly silence that had fallen over her own car just an hour ago. Sarah was still reeling, trying to reconcile the larger-than-life image of Elvis Presley with the humble, thoughtful man sitting beside her. He had turned on the radio, but kept the volume low, a soft bluesy tune playing in the background. It wasn't his music which surprised her a little, but it fit the late-night quiet mood. "So, Sarah," he said, his voice calm, "what do you do when you're not studying to be a nurse?" She told him about her part-time job at the local diner waiting tables to make ends meet. She described the regulars, the morning rush, the smell of coffee and bacon. He listened intently, occasionally interjecting with a chuckle or a question. "Sounds like good, honest work," he commented. "Always respected folks who work hard for what they got." He paused, then added, "My mama, she always taught me the value of $1. We didn't have much growing up, you know." Sarah nodded, though she found it hard to imagine Elvis Presley, the epitome of wealth and fame, ever lacking anything. Yet his words held a ring of truth, a sincerity that transcended his current status. "What about you, Elvis?" she ventured, suddenly feeling bold. "What's it like being you?" He let out a soft sigh, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Well, Sarah, it's a lot of things. It's a blessing, no doubt about that. To be able to do what I love, to share my music with folks, to see the joy it brings, there's nothing quite like it." He paused, looking out at the darkness. "But it's also a burden sometimes. Folks expect a lot, and sometimes they don't see the man, just the image." He glanced at her, and his blue eyes held a touch of weariness. "It's hard to find a quiet moment sometimes, to just be regular, like tonight, just driving, clearing my head." "It's rare." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy. She had never considered the flip side of such immense fame. It sounded lonely in a way. "I imagine it must be," she said softly. "It is," he agreed. "That's why moments like these, even when they start with a broken-down car, are refreshing. Just a couple of folks talking. No fuss, no fanfare." He clearly wasn't looking for adoration or fawning. He was just a man talking to another human being. This realization deepened Sarah's respect for him. He wasn't just kind, he was remarkably down to earth and seemed to genuinely appreciate simple, authentic interactions. As they drove, the conversation flowed easily. He asked about her family, her dreams for the future. She found herself opening up, telling him things she wouldn't normally share with a stranger, much less the Elvis Presley. There was something about his presence, a calming, accepting aura that made it easy. He shared a few lighthearted stories from his early days touring, comical mishaps, and the sheer exhilaration of performing. He spoke of his love for gospel music, the foundation of his musical journey. His passion was evident in his voice, his gestures. "You know," he said, turning his head slightly to look at her, "I always believed in helping folks. It's what my mama taught me. If you got a little extra, you share it. If someone's in trouble, you lend a hand. Simple as that." His words resonated deeply with Sarah. In a world that often felt cold and indifferent, his simple philosophy was a beacon. He wasn't just talking the talk. He was walking the walk out here in the middle of the night for a complete stranger. After about 20 minutes, they saw the faint glow of lights on the horizon. Harmony Creek. It wasn't a big town, but it would have a garage, maybe even an all-night diner. "There we are," Elvis said, gesturing towards the lights. "We'll find you a place to get that car looked at, or at least get you a comfortable place to wait until morning." Sarah felt a surge of relief mixed with a touch of sadness that their unexpected journey was coming to an end. It had been one of the most bizarre, yet most profoundly human experiences of her life. She looked at him, truly looked at him, not as the icon, but as the man who had stopped to help. "Thank you, Elvis," she said, her voice thick with genuine emotion. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done." He offered her a warm, reassuring smile. "Don't you worry about it, Sarah. Just glad I could be of some help." And in that moment, under the quiet hum of his powerful car and the approaching lights of a small town, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and admiration for the man beside her. He was truly one of a kind. Harmony Creek was indeed a small town, but the lights of a neon sign beckoned them. "Pop's Diner, open 24 hours. Elvis pulled his magnificent car into the empty parking lot, its chrome glinting under the harsh streetlight. Cut the engine, and the sudden silence felt heavy after the comfortable hum of the road. "Looks like our best bet," he said, pushing open his door. "We can grab a cup of coffee and figure out a tow for your car." Sarah followed him inside. The diner was quiet. Only a few truckers hunched over coffee cups at the counter, their faces illuminated by the glow of the television showing a late-night movie. A tired-looking waitress, a woman with a beehive hairdo and a name tag that read Betty, looked up as they entered. Her eyes widened, her jaw dropping slightly as she recognized Elvis. Sarah watched as the waitress's expression shifted from weary indifference to outright shock, and then a hesitant starstruck awe. Elvis, however, seemed completely unfazed. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice as smooth as velvet. "Could we trouble you for a couple of coffees and perhaps a phone book? My friend here is stranded, and we're looking to get a tow truck." Betty, flustered, stammered, "Oh, of course, Mr. Presley. Anything you need. Right this way, please." She led them to a booth in the corner, trying to be discreet, but her eyes kept darting back to him, clearly overwhelmed. As they settled into the buy-loan booth, Elvis leaned across the table slightly. "Looks like Betty recognized me," he said with a wry, self-deprecating smile. "Happens a lot. Just try not to make too much of a fuss. Okay, I'm just looking for a quiet cup of coffee." Sarah nodded, trying to suppress her own starstruck tendencies. It was a strange dynamic being privy to this intimate, ordinary moment with an extraordinary man. Betty returned quickly with 2 steaming mugs of coffee and a well-worn phone book. She hovered for a moment, clearly wanting to say something, but Elvis gave her another kind smile. "Thank you kindly, Betty. That's just perfect." His politeness seemed to calm her, and she retreated, though she continued to steal glances at their booth from behind the counter. Elvis opened the phone book, flipping through the yellowed pages. "Let's see, mechanics, towing services." He ran his finger down a list of numbers. "Looks like there's one that might be open all night, or at least has an emergency line." Picked up the phone at their booth, dialed and spoke in hushed tones, arranging for a tow truck to pick up Sarah's car in the morning. He gave them precise directions to where her car was located, describing landmarks with surprising detail. Sarah listened, grateful, and a little amazed at his efficiency. He wasn't just offering a ride, he was handling everything. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "Okay, they'll pick it up first thing in the morning, and they'll take a look at it. You just give them my name and they'll know who to charge." He said it so casually, as if lending his name to cover a tow and repair was an everyday occurrence. Sarah's eyes widened. "Elvis, you can't." He cut her off with a gentle shake of his head. "Nonsense. Consider it a favor, Sarah. I wouldn't have it any other way." His tone brooked no argument. He then signaled Betty for a couple of slices of pie. "You look like you could use something sweet," he said to Sarah. "And a little sugar never hurt anyone." As they waited for the pie, their conversation picked up again, flowing naturally. They talked about simple things. The best kind of pie, The merits of country music versus rock and roll. He defended both passionately. And the quiet beauty of a starlit night. He spoke about his home, Graceland, with a mixture of pride and a yearning for privacy. It's a beautiful place, Sarah. Full of memories. But sometimes I just want to walk down the street without folks staring, just be a regular person. Sarah nodded. I can only imagine. It's moments like these, he continued, taking a sip of his coffee, where you just get to be yourself. No cameras, no crowds, just two folks talking. He looked at her, and his gaze was warm and genuine. You're a good listener, Sarah, and you seem like a good soul. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. Coming from him, such a simple compliment felt incredibly profound. She found herself truly enjoying his company, not because he was Elvis Presley, but because he was kind, respectful, and genuinely interested. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just being himself. Betty brought their pie, a generous slice of apple for Elvis and cherry for Sarah. She still looked a little awestruck, but more relaxed now. As she put the plates down, Elvis thanked her with another charming smile, and Betty almost melted on the spot. Eating pie in a quiet diner with Elvis Presley across the table was perhaps the most surreal moment of Sarah's life. But it was also, surprisingly, one of the most comforting. He had transformed a terrifying, lonely breakdown into an almost magical, heartwarming encounter. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to paint the sky when Elvis finally helped Sarah find a motel room for the night. He insisted on paying for it, brushing aside her protests with that same gentle, unyielding kindness. You've had a rough night, Sarah, he'd said. Get some rest. I'll pick you up in a few hours and we'll go check on your car. Sarah, exhausted and overwhelmed, could only nod in weary gratitude. She had tried to offer him something for the ride, for the tow arrangement, for the pie, for the motel. But he had simply smiled and shaken his head. We'll talk about all that later, okay? Just rest. True to his word, Elvis pulled up to the motel entrance in his sleek car just as the sun was fully illuminating the sleepy town. Sarah was waiting, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and disbelief. Was this really happening? Was she really about to spend another morning with Elvis Presley? He greeted her with a warm smile. Sleep? Well, better than I would have in my car, she admitted, getting in. Thank you, Elvis, really. He just nodded and started the engine right then. Let's go see about that car of yours. Towing service had taken her car to Eddie's auto shop, a small, unassuming garage on the edge of town. As Elvis's car pulled into the gravel lot, a man in grease-stained overalls, a wrench in his hand, emerged from under a raised hood of another vehicle. He was a burly man with a thick mustache, looking gruff and preoccupied. Then he saw Elvis. The wrench clattered to the ground. Eddie's jaw went slack. His eyes widened, and he slowly straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag as if preparing for a royal inspection. Elvis, ever gracious, offered a polite nod. Morning, Eddie. Hope we're not bothering you too early. No, sir, never too early. What an honor. What can I do for you? He glanced from Elvis to Sarah, a bewildered expression on his face, clearly trying to piece together why the king of rock and roll was showing up at his humble auto shop with a young woman in tow. My friend here, Sarah, Elvis explained, gesturing to her. Her car broke down last night out on Old Mill Road. You got her towed in, I reckon. Just wondering if you had a chance to look at it. Eddie was still trying to process the situation, but he quickly snapped to attention. Yes, sir. Got it in just a little while ago. It's on lift number 3. Just started looking at it. In fact, follow me, please. He led them into the garage, a cavernous space filled with the smells of oil and gasoline. Sarah's old sedan looked pathetically small and vulnerable on the hydraulic lift. Eddie gestured to it. From the looks of it, Mr. Presley. Sarah, it's the alternator, Eddie announced, pointing to a part beneath the hood. Might need replacing, or at least a serious repair. That's why she wouldn't crank, not getting any charge back to the battery. Can you fix it today, Eddie? Elvis asked, his voice calm and practical. Well, sir, I might have to order the part. It's not a common one for these older models. Might take a day or two for delivery. Sarah's heart sank. A day or two. That meant more moto. That meant more moto fru. No problem, Eddie. You do what you gotta do. Order the part, just make sure it's the best quality. He then turned to Sarah. Looks like you'll be staying in Harmony Creek for a bit longer, Sarah. But Elvis, the cost and I have to get to my aunt's, Sarah began, feeling a surge of anxiety. He gave her a reassuring smile. Don't you fret about the cost. We talked about this and your aunt. I'm sure she'll understand. You can call her from here once your car's fixed. We'll get you back on the road safely. Eddie, meanwhile, was still starstruck, but professional. He quickly got to work making calls to suppliers, his voice uncharacteristically respectful and subdued. He seemed determined to do his absolute best work for Elvis Presley. Elvis and Sarah found a couple of worn plastic chairs in a small waiting area. Elvis picked up a dusty magazine, flipping through it casually. Sarah watched him, still marveling at the ease with which he handled fame and the simple, profound kindness he showed. He wasn't just fixing her problem. He was providing comfort and a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. After a few more minutes, Eddie came over, a look of triumph on his face. Good news, Mr. Presley. Got a supplier an hour away. Who has the part? Can have it here by lunch. We'll get her fixed up for you by this afternoon, no problem. That's great news, Eddie, Elvis said genuinely. Thank you, you're a lifesaver. Eddie beamed clearly, thrilled to be praised by Elvis Presley. Anything for you, Mr. Presley. He glanced at Sarah, then back at Elvis. So, what's your story, if you don't mind me asking, sir? How'd you two, meet? Elvis chuckled, glancing at Sarah with a conspiratorial smile. Just a good Samaritan. Eddie met Sarah out on the road last night. Car troubles. Couldn't just leave her there, could I? Eddie shook his head, a look of profound respect on his face. No, sir, not many would. That's mighty fine of you, Mr. Presley. Mighty fine. Sarah felt a surge of pride, a quiet warmth filling her chest. She wasn't just grateful. She was deeply moved by his genuine nature. He was making this entire unbelievable experience not just bearable but truly memorable and heartwarming. The hours at Eddie's auto shop passed surprisingly quickly. Elvis, true to his word, stayed with Sarah. Talked to Eddie, learning about the local area, sharing stories about his own early days when he used to tinker with cars. He signed a quick autograph for Eddie's son, who had been called in by his excited father. He even bought Sarah a soda from the vending machine, insisting she pick her favorite. He never once made her feel like a burden or an inconvenience. Instead, he treated her like a friend, someone whose well-being he genuinely cared about. This was perhaps the most astonishing part of the entire experience. The humility and human connection from a man who could easily have been aloof or dismissive. Finally, late that afternoon, Eddie emerged from beneath Sarah's car, wiping his hands on a greasy rag, a triumphant grin on his face. All done, Mr. Presley? Ceremony. Gave her a quick tune-up for good measure. She's running like a dream. Sarah's heart leaped. Oh, Eddie, thank you, Eddie, Elvis asked, pulling out his wallet. Eddie hesitated, then named a price. It was a fair price for the work, maybe even a little less than she'd expected. Clearly influenced by who he was, talking to Elvis pulled out a stack of bills. Sarah watched, her stomach tightening. She knew he had offered to pay, but the sight of him doing it for her car felt like an immense debt she couldn't possibly repay. Wait, Elvis, she interjected, her voice firm, surprising herself with her own boldness. No, please, let me. This is my car, my responsibility. She reached into her purse, her fingers fumbling, and pulled out her own small, crumpled wad of bills. It wasn't much, but it was all she had saved up from her diner job, carefully hoarded for emergencies. It was barely enough to cover the repair, certainly not the tow or the motel room, but it was hers. Elvis turned to her, his blue eyes softening. Sarah, we talked about this. It's no trouble, consider it done. He started to hand the money to Eddie. No, Sarah insisted, her voice rising slightly. She stepped forward, standing between Elvis and Eddie. "Please, I appreciate everything you've done, truly, more than words can say. But I can't let you pay for this. I just can't. It wouldn't be right." She held out her own money, her hand trembling slightly. It felt like a point of pride, a desperate need to maintain some dignity in this surreal situation. She was already so indebted to him for his time, his kindness, his patience. She couldn't add a financial burden to that. It felt wrong, like taking advantage of his generosity. "Sarah," Elvis said, his voice gentle but with an underlying firmness, "don't you worry about it. I'm more than happy to help." Tried to brush off her offer, reaching past her to pay Eddie. "No, Elvis, please," she repeated, almost pleading. Tears pricked at her eyes again, but this time they were tears of overwhelming gratitude, mixed with a stubborn pride. "You've done so much. You drove me, you found the tow, you got me a motel room, you've spent your entire day here with me. That's more than enough, more than I could ever ask for this. This is my burden. Let me handle it." Her voice cracked on the last words. She knew how ridiculous she must sound, insisting on paying her own way when a legend was offering to cover everything. But it was important to her, a point of honor. She couldn't let his generosity completely erase her independence. Eddie, caught in the middle of this unexpected standoff, looked from Sarah to Elvis, clearly uncomfortable. Elvis paused, his hand still holding the money, his eyes fixed on Sarah's. He saw the genuine distress in her eyes, the earnestness in her plea. He saw that this wasn't about the money for her, but about something far deeper. Her dignity, her fierce independence, her desire to not be a charity case. He saw the pride in her gaze, the unwavering determination. A slow smile, a truly understanding one, spread across his face. He recognized that spirit. He had a similar one himself. He had come from nothing, built everything with his own hands, his own voice. He understood the need to stand on one's own 2 feet. He slowly withdrew his hand, putting his wallet back into his pocket. He looked at Eddie. "All right, Eddie," he said, his voice calm. "Sarah's going to handle this. You take her money." Sarah let out a small, relieved breath. She quickly counted out her bills and handed them to Eddie. He took them, still looking a little surprised, but professional. "Right then, pleasure doing business with you, Sarah." He looked at Elvis, a hint of confusion still in his eyes, but a deeper respect had clearly settled there. "Thank you, Eddie," Sarah said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. As Eddie went to process the payment, Sarah turned to Elvis, her eyes shining with unshed tears of gratitude. "Thank you for understanding," she whispered. He simply nodded, his smile gentle. "I do, Sarah, I truly do." His refusal to accept payment for his enormous kindness was now, paradoxically, a moment of profound acceptance of her own dignity. It was, indeed, pure class. With her car paid for and running smoothly, Sarah felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in days. The engine purred strong and reliable. Eddie had even cleaned the windshield. A small gesture of his respect. Sarah walked around to the passenger side where Elvis was waiting. "All right," she said, a genuine smile on her face. "She's all ready to go." Elvis nodded, opening the passenger door of her car. "For her. Good to hear, Sarah. Drive safe now." She slid into the driver's seat, then looked up at him. He was standing there, his hands in his pockets, his famous face looking relaxed and content. "Elvis," she began, her voice soft, I don't even know how to thank you for everything, for stopping for the ride, for staying with me, for arranging the tow in the motel, for everything." She felt a lump form in her throat. Her eyes welled up again. It wasn't just the practical help. It was the warmth, the patience, the sheer human decency he had shown a complete stranger. It was a kindness that went beyond celebrity, beyond expectation. She reached for her purse, again rummaging inside. "I know I paid for the car repair," she said, her voice a little shaky. "But the tow, the motel, and your time, Elvis, Your time is so precious. Please let me at least give you something for your gas, for the inconvenience, for everything. She pulled out a small wad of money, all that was left of her savings after the car repair. It probably wouldn't even cover a fraction of the gas his luxury car consumed, let alone compensate him for his lost day, but it was her earnest attempt to show her gratitude. She held out the crumpled bills to him. Elvis looked at the money, then back at her, his blue eyes warm and unwavering. He didn't take the money. Instead, he gently pushed her hand back towards her. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft, deeper than usual, filled with a quiet sincerity that resonated deep within her. "You don't owe me a thing." He paused, then continued, his gaze holding hers. "Look, Sarah, I've been blessed more than I ever could have imagined. I've got more money than I know what to do with. And I've got people who love my music. That's a gift." Took a step closer, leaning down slightly so their eyes were level. "But that's not what truly matters, Sarah. What truly matters is how you treat people, how you use those blessings." He straightened up, looking out at the road, then back at her. "My mama, she always told me, Elvis, if you see someone in need, and you have the means to help, you help them. No questions asked, no strings attached. You just do it because it's the right thing to do." He turned back to her, a faint, understanding smile on his lips. And that's what this was. Sarah just doing the right thing. There's no fee for that, no payment necessary. He reached out and gently patted her hand, which was still clutching the money. "Keep that, Sarah. You worked hard for it. You put it towards your nursing studies. Help yourself first, and then, when you're able, you help someone else down the road. That's the real payment. That's the only payment I want." He wasn't just refusing money. He was refusing the concept of transactional kindness. He was teaching her a lesson, a powerful one, about true generosity and selfless compassion. His refusal was not just polite. It was an act of grace. It was pure class. Sarah stared at him, tears now freely streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming awe and gratitude. She had never encountered such genuine, unadulterated kindness in her life. He wasn't doing it for publicity or for a reward. He was doing it because it was simply who he was. "Thank you, Elvis," she managed, her voice barely a whisper, choked with emotion. I'll never forget this, never." He gave her a warm, reassuring smile. "I know you won't, Sarah, and I know you'll do good in the world. You strike me as that kind of person." He stepped back from her car. "All right then, you got your map? You know your way?" Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Yes, I do." "Good. Then you get on your way. Be safe, and don't you let that old car give you any more trouble." He gave her a final, genuine nod, his eyes twinkling. With one last grateful look at the man who had turned her despair into a miracle, Sarah put her car in gear. She slowly pulled out of Eddie's auto shop, past the awestruck mechanic who was still watching, and onto the road. In her rear-view mirror, she watched as Elvis Presley, the king, got back into his own magnificent car, a solitary figure radiating kindness, before it too smoothly, powerfully, pulled out and disappeared down the road in the opposite direction. Sarah drove away from Harmony Creek, her heart full, a warmth spreading through her chest that chased away the lingering chill of the night before. Her old sedan, revitalized by Eddie's work, hummed contentedly beneath her, a stark contrast to its earlier dying groans. But it wasn't just the fixed car that made her feel lighter. It was the profound encounter she had just experienced. She kept glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting to see Elvis there, his piercing blue eyes and kind smile. The reality of it was still settling in like a dream that felt impossibly real. She had met Elvis Presley, the king, and he had been nothing like the distant, larger-than-life figure portrayed in magazines and on television. He had been a man of immense humility, genuine warmth, and a quiet, profound generosity. His words, "You don't owe me a thing. You just do it because it's the right thing to do," echoed in her mind. They weren't just words, they were a philosophy, a way of life spoken by someone who clearly lived by them. The way he had refused her money, not with arrogance or dismissal, but with understanding and grace, was etched into her memory. It was an act of pure distilled class. She thought about the truckers at Pop's Diner, the starstruck waitress, and the awestruck mechanic. They saw the legend, the icon. But Sarah had seen the man who cared enough to stop to spend his precious time to ensure a complete stranger was safe and taken care of without seeking any reward or recognition. As the miles flew by, the landscape gradually changing from rural roads to more familiar highways, Sarah felt a subtle shift within herself. The encounter had not only saved her from a terrible night, but had also instilled in her a renewed sense of hope and belief in humanity. In a world that often felt harsh and uncaring, Elvis Presley had been a living testament to the power of simple, selfless kindness. She thought of his words, "When you're able, you help someone else down the road. That's the real payment." It was a powerful challenge, a gentle instruction. It was a lesson far more valuable than any money he could have given her. When she finally reached her aunt's house, exhausted but exhilarated, she immediately shared her incredible story. Her aunt, a pragmatic woman, listened with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. "You mean Elvis Presley, the Elvis?" she kept asking, her eyes wide. Sarah recounted every detail, emphasizing his kindness, his down-to-earth nature, his absolute refusal to be compensated. "He truly is something else, Aunt Carol," Sarah concluded, her voice full of emotion. "He didn't want anything. He just wanted to help." Her aunt shook her head, still in awe. "Well, that just goes to show you. Doesn't it? Even the most famous folks can be the most decent." That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she replayed the entire sequence of events in her mind. The despair on the dark road, the sudden, powerful headlights, the shock of recognizing him, the comfortable conversation in his luxurious car, the quiet diner, the diligent mechanic, and finally, his profound refusal. Felt like a dream, yet every detail was vivid, imprinted on her heart. The memory wasn't just about meeting a celebrity, it was about experiencing a profound act of human connection and generosity. It reshaped her perspective, reminding her that even in the darkest of moments, light and kindness could appear from the most unexpected places. It was a reminder that true wealth wasn't just about money, but about the richness of character and the willingness to give without expectation. Sarah drifted off to sleep, a peaceful smile on her face. The echo of Elvis Presley's pure class would resonate within her for a very long time. Years passed, but the memory of that night on the deserted road and the man who had stopped to help never faded. For Sarah, it remained a vivid, cherished beacon in her life, a constant reminder of the profound power of simple kindness. She finished her nursing degree, working diligently, fueled in part by the memory of Elvis's words, "You put it towards your nursing studies. Help yourself first, and then, when you're able, you help someone else down the road." She became a compassionate, dedicated nurse, always going the extra mile for her patients, offering a comforting word or an extra moment of care. She remembered how Elvis had made her feel seen, valued, and cared for, and she strove to extend that same feeling to others. Whenever she faced a difficult situation or felt a moment of despair, she would close her eyes and recall his steady gaze, his gentle smile, his unwavering conviction that helping others was simply the right thing to do. It gave her strength, reminded her that goodness existed, and that she too could contribute to it. She told the story often to friends, to new acquaintances, to her future children. Each time she wouldn't focus on the celebrity aspect, but on the man's character. "He was the kindest person I've ever met," she'd say, her eyes shining. "He didn't just help me out of a bind. He showed me what it truly means to be generous without any thought of return." The crumpled bills she had tried to offer him that night, the small sum that felt so enormous to her, at the time she eventually used it for something special, a small personal donation to a local charity that helped stranded travelers. It was her way of paying it forward, a direct echo of Elvis's instruction. She didn't put his name on it, but she knew in her heart that it was inspired by him. One day, many years later, Sarah found herself driving down a familiar, quiet back road, the same road where her car had broken down all those years ago. It was daytime now, the sun bright, the landscape vibrant. She saw a car pulled over on the shoulder, its hood up, and a young woman standing beside it, looking distraught, much like Sarah herself had been. Sarah didn't hesitate. She pulled her car over. A much newer, more reliable vehicle. The young woman looked up, her face streaked with worry. "Everything all right?" Sarah asked, her voice calm and reassuring, echoing the words Elvis had spoken to her. The young woman shook her head. "No, ma'am. Car just died. I'm stranded. No cell service out here." Sarah smiled gently. "Happens to the best of us." She remembered Elvis's exact words. "Mind if I'd take a look?" She got out of her car, walked over and peered under the hood. She knew nothing about engines, but she knew how to find help. "Looks like you're in a bit of a pickle," she said, recalling another one of Elvis's phrases. "Tell you what, my name's Sarah. I'm heading to Harmony Creek. I can give you a ride. We can find a mechanic there and get you sorted." The young woman looked at her relief, flooding her face. "Oh, thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done." As they drove, Sarah shared her story. Not about meeting Elvis Presley, the superstar, but about meeting a kind man who taught her a valuable lesson about helping others. She talked about his genuine nature, his simple desire to do the right thing, his refusal to be paid. "He told me that the only payment he wanted was for me to pay it forward when I could," Sarah explained to the young woman who listened captivated. "And that's what I try to do. So don't you worry about a thing. We'll get your car fixed and you'll be on your way." The young woman looked at Sarah, a newfound respect and admiration in her eyes. "You're just like him," she whispered. Sarah smiled. He left quite an impression. The encounter with Elvis Presley had been a moment of pure class, not just for his refusal of payment, but for the ripple effect of kindness it set in motion. It was a testament that true generosity extends beyond the initial act, inspiring an endless chain of goodness. One person helping another just because it's the right thing to do. And in a quiet, profound way, Elvis Presley's legacy of kindness continued to live on, one good deed at a time.